The Sleeping Beauty, Level 3, Chapter 1. The Little Princess and the Six Fairies. There was a king and a queen who were married. They had no children. But one day they gave birth to a little daughter. There was a celebration in the kingdom. It was time for a ceremony in the church. The king and queen held a feast. They asked 6 fairies to be the princess's godmothers. But the queen forgot to invite a 7th fairy. This fairy was powerful and also very bad. Chapter 2. The 7th Fairy. It was the day of the church ceremony. The 6 good fairies came in carriages. They were welcomed by the king and queen. After talking to them, the king and queen showed the fairies the way to the hall. Everything there was wonderful. There were delicious fruits and meats there along with bread. The dishes were gold, and each fairy was given a wine glass. 1 glass was made of diamond. 1 glass was made of ruby, and 1 glass was made of emerald. Even in their fairy houses, they didn't have such lovely wine glasses. The fairies were excited about everything. They were all sitting down. There was a loud noise outside. The queen looked outside and she was shocked. The bad fairy came. The queen thought the bad fairy came to do something evil. Her carriage was black and she had 4 dragons. The bad fairy came out of her carriage and walked into the hall with her staff. "How did this happen?" she cried to the queen. "All my sisters were asked to come, but I was not asked." The queen did not know how to answer this. The queen was nervous. But the queen made the 7th fairy feel welcome. The 7th fairy sat next to the king. The king and queen said they knew the fairy would come, but there was no wine glass for the 7th fairy. When she saw the other wine glasses, her face became angry. Her eyes were red. The 7th fairy ate and drank, but she did not say anything. Chapter 3. The Gifts from the Fairies. After the feast, they brought the little princess into the room. She smiled so nicely and looked so pure. Only a person with a bad heart could plan something bad for her. The first fairy held the child and said, "My gift to the princess shall be happiness." "Gold is good," said the second fairy, "so I will give her the gift of wealth." "She shall be healthy," said the third. "And I," said the fourth, "I will give her the gift of beauty." "And fun," said the fifth, "that is my gift to her." The 6th fairy was still thinking. Then the bad fairy came out. While the other fairies were talking, the bad fairy was very angry. "And I say," she said, "that when she's 17, she will poke her finger on a pin and die." The queen cried, and the king's face was white. But the sixth fairy said something. "Wait," she said. "I didn't say anything yet. I say that the princess will not die. She will sleep for 100 years, and everyone will sleep with her. After that, a prince will kiss her and she will wake up." When the evil fairy heard this, she was very angry. But the sixth fairy had already spoken. There was nothing the evil fairy could do. She ran out of the castle and jumped into her carriage and went far away. The other fairies also went away. They were sad. They knew that later something bad was going to happen to the princess. The king told everyone to take away every pin from the land. He felt very happy again. If all the pins were gone, the princess could not poke her finger. If she did not poke her finger, she would not sleep. So the king and queen were glad. Everything was fine in the castle for 17 years. Everything that the fairies said came true. The princess was beautiful. She was funny and kind. She had health, wealth, and happiness. She smiled and was happy. Chapter 4: The Sleeping Princess. One day, the king and queen were out traveling. The princess climbed up into a high tower. This was her first time to go into the tower. She wanted to see her parents come back home. She found the stairs. She climbed up until she was high above the castle. After a while, she came to the top of the tower. She found an iron door with an old key inside. The princess turned the key. The door was open. The princess saw a room. Inside the room was an old woman. The old woman was sitting at a spinning wheel. The princess had never seen a spinning wheel before. It was so new to her. The princess walked into the room and came close to the old woman. The princess wanted to see it better. "What are you doing?" the princess asked. "I am making cloth," answered the old woman. "And what is that little thing moving so fast?" "That is a pin." "It is very nice," said the princess, and she lifted up her hand to touch it. The pin poked her finger. The princess fell onto a sofa and went to sleep. Everyone in the castle went to sleep quickly. The king and queen came home from their trip. They went into the castle. Then they fell asleep. The king's helpers also fell asleep. The animals in the garden slept, and the birds slept too. The boy in the kitchen slept. The cook was not angry at the boy because she was asleep too. The food was not burned because the fire was also sleeping. Even the bugs in the flowers were not moving. Everyone and everything slept. Then a magic forest grew very fast all around the castle. The forest was like a wall. The forest grew very thick and tall. Nothing could be seen. The princess slept, but people did not forget about her. Many princes and heroes came and tried to cut down the trees to save the princess. But the tree branches were hard, and they grew back very quickly. After many years, the heroes who tried to save the princess got married and had children. The heroes' children also grew up and got married. In the end, everyone forgot about the princess. Chapter 5. 100 years later. After 100 years, a prince came by the castle. The prince was young and handsome. He had been hunting. He was riding his horse very fast. He left the other people behind. The prince was hot and tired. He saw a small shack. He stopped there to get some water. The man who lived in the shack was very old. He gave some water to the prince. After the prince had a drink of water, he sat for a while and looked around. I see a large dark shadow over there. It looks like a cloud. What is in the darkness? He asked. I don't know, said the old man. I never went there, but my grandfather told me that it was a magic forest. He said there was a castle in the middle of the forest. He said that a princess was sleeping inside it. And how long has she been sleeping there? Asked the prince. I don't know. She has been there for a long, long time, answered the old man. The prince thanked the old man for telling him the story. Then the prince rode onto the magic forest. He went very fast. Chapter 6. The Princess Wakes Up. The forest was dark like a cloud, but when the prince came close to the forest, the flowers started to grow. When the prince walked into the forest, the tree branches opened up. The prince rode down the road, and when he came to the castle, he entered the garden and looked around. He was amazed. The dogs were sleeping. The horses were sleeping. The doormen were sleeping. The prince went into the castle. He looked around the rooms. No one woke up to stop the prince. After a while, the prince found the stairs and he climbed them. He came to the tower room, and then he stopped. There was a young woman on a sofa. The prince looked at her and kissed her. At that moment, the castle was full of sounds. Everyone was waking up. The king and queen woke up and stretched. The doormen woke up from sleep. The horses ran around. The dogs barked. The food in the kitchen was burning. The cook was angry. The king's helpers smiled. In the tower, the princess opened her eyes. When she saw the prince, she loved the prince. The prince took her hand. "Will you be my wife?" he said. The princess answered, "Yes." The prince and princess got married. The 6 fairies came to the wedding with beautiful gifts. The 7th fairy died because she was so angry. But the prince and princess lived happily ever after.